A promise that I made myself this year was that with my videos, I was going to get more real, more vulnerable. And that's exactly what I'm doing with this video. This video is vulnerable for me to share because it is a personal story between me and my fiancé. But in the interests of people being able to relate to suffering and pain, I felt that there was a need to share this story. So last week, I was in a really bad way emotionally. And that is because some old feelings of rejection are coming up for me. How they get triggered is that I suddenly feel like I'm not loved. I'll give you an example of something that specifically happened on one of the nights. So I was quite busy during the day, and then at a certain point in the night, I found myself waiting for Christian to come into the living area. But he was still in his room for ages and ages and ages and ages. And I suddenly started to feel this kind of feeling in my chest that it's like this kind of constricted feeling. Why is he spending so much time in his room? Why won't he come out and spend time with me? Doesn't he love me? Doesn't he want to spend time with me? It was almost like all of a sudden like this screw just started to get loose in my brain, and I started to have these thoughts about not being loved. The pattern that's been playing out recently between me and Christian, who is my fiancé, is that I've been wanting more and he's been withdrawing more. And then so I project back onto him all my feelings, and then that makes him withdraw even more. And so we've both recognized that this is a pattern, and we both acknowledge how much we love each other, that we need to do something to change the status quo. On this particular night, as I started to feel the sadness just come up inside me, I felt that, okay, I need to do something different. But in actual fact, I really don't feel like that was my thought. I don't feel like I had the ability to actually do something different. It was just something that sort of dropped in. And it was like, go to your room. Go to your own room. Don't sit there waiting in the living room. Go to your room. And so I went into my bedroom. I lit a candle and I started to pray. And I just started to pray that this pain that I was feeling inside me, this sadness that I was feeling inside me, was going to somehow disappear. And at first, as I'm sitting with my emotions, I just felt an enormous amount of anger towards Christian. I felt really, really angry that he was pulling himself apart from me, that he was creating distance from me, that he was impacting our relationship when it was in such a good state, that this is all him. It's all about him, what he's doing to me. What I then did was I put one hand on my heart chakra and one hand on my tummy. And I just started to breathe through the emotion. I started to feel the anger. And then it started to just disappear. And then what was left was this feeling of love for Christian. Like love that whatever he's feeling is perfectly okay. He doesn't need to come to me when I want him to come to me so that I can feel better about myself. As I was going deeper and deeper into this feeling that I was experiencing, it was clear to me that it was a feeling of rejection. And this feeling of rejection, I traced it all the way back to when it first started. And I just did this by closing my eyes and having meditation music on. And I went all the way back to my birth. Although logically, I understand all the things that happened when I was born, I felt the pain of rejection back then. Because when I was born, I had such a traumatic birth that she ended up going back into the hospital for 3 months. I think that also created the relationship, which was quite strained between me and my mum, really all the way until my father's passing. And so I started to really feeling of rejection, that it's not about Christian. It was this massive breakthrough. It was nothing to do with him. It was my subconscious having an issue about rejection. It was an old wound that had opened up every time I felt rejection from somebody else. I then also connected how I've played out this pattern throughout my life. So whenever I felt like I wasn't getting enough attention from my first husband, I would seek the attention somewhere else. And that's what happened in my second marriage as well, is as soon as I felt like, and usually after a number of years, where the attention that used to be so focused on me suddenly starts to wane, I seek it from somewhere else. And I feel like that's what we do, is that we're seeking subconsciously for our partner to make us feel good about ourselves, to help us feel loved, and to fill in the gaps from where there were gaps when we're much younger. But they're never going to be able to fill the gaps up because they're human and they have their own needs. And so the question that I was asking myself in the days leading up to this is codependence. Am I codependent on Christian, or is this a standard that I actually deserve? I deserve to be loved passionately and completely and perfectly. The answer that arrived to me was, it's both. I do deserve total love and perfection, but that love needs to come from me first. And I am codependent on Christian to feel loved all the time and to feel that he's there for me, he'll do anything for me. He did create that when we first got together, this scenario where he would do anything for me, and there was so much giving, and then I'm the kind of person that gives a lot back. Like, I give a lot of myself. I love a lot. I love big, and I expect my partner to love big back. But not everybody can deliver that all the time because everyone's got their own wounding. So just like I have my wounding from my childhood of rejection, he's got his own wounding from whatever occurred in his life. I realized that I was addicted to feeling loved by someone else to make me feel good. And that is codependency. It was my rejection issue that lay deep in my subconscious mind that needed to be hugged and needed to be loved. But when I held myself really deeply by having my hand on my heart chakra and my other hand on my tummy, I was holding myself. I was giving the love to myself. So it was never about him, because our emotional triggers often have nothing to do with the people around us and everything to do with unresolved wounds within ourselves. When I did do something differently, so instead of projecting my anger towards him or projecting my sadness towards him, which would then just create a further distance, when I did something different and went into the room and lit a candle and prayed and held myself, I was able to drop right down into that emotion, all the way down to where it first started. By doing something different, I broke the pattern that has been really like this block for the whole of my life. My invitation to you is to reflect on your own patterns. What are your patterns that you keep repeating? And that when you do feel an emotion such as sadness or anger, rather than projecting it or sharing it with someone else, in my mind, it wasn't about projecting. It was, this is how I'm feeling, so I need to tell Christian how I'm feeling. Because I tell him every time how I'm feeling. But what he tends to do is he tends to process his emotions, talk about them much later, whereas I tend to, just say everything straight away. And so do something different, break that pattern. If you are that person that projects, go and sit with yourself and really hold yourself and just observe what's going to come up. Because when you're in silence, what actually happens is this insight will drop in as to where it really comes from. Just know that you are held, that you are not alone. I really do believe that guidance that I was given to go and sit by myself in the room was not from me. I don't know who it was from, but somebody in my spirit team that's looking out for me. And we all have a spirit team that looks out for us. And so you are not alone, my love. Any kind of sadness that gets triggered by your partner or your friends or your colleagues or anybody, it's coming from a deeper wounding that's deep inside you. Take a moment to hold yourself to feel the feeling. And even though it's uncomfortable to feel the feeling, it was uncomfortable for me to feel the feeling of anger and sadness. I was able to drop all the way in and go to the end of the tunnel to find out where it came from. That way I was able to really send out forgiveness to my mother and to anybody who's ever felt, contributed to the feeling of rejection within me that really was always within me. And by doing that, I went back the next day and acknowledged to Christian, what my breakthrough was and how I found that it wasn't actually anything to do with him. Then he had this sigh of relief that, it's not about him, that it's actually about me. And there's complete responsibility and acknowledgement that it is about me. And so when we do that, we can change things. We can shift things. We can feel the healing within our bodies. The next time you feel anger or sadness, go and sit with it. Go hold yourself, light a candle, pray for help, and you will be assisted. You will be supported. You will be loved. You will be taken care of. Sending you so much love, and I would really appreciate that you subscribe to this channel, that you share your comments down below, because this is the year for me to get really honest and vulnerable in the uncomfortable of sharing personal stories that are in the present tense. It's not just a story that happened 2 years ago or 3 years ago. It literally just happened last week. And so please show me your support, and your support, we're able to be more real with each other, and we're able to share what's really going on instead of showing just what's on the surface and what people feel comfortable talking about. Sending you so much love.